Welcome into the latest edition of Espn Fc. I'm Dan Thomas. A little later on in the show, Sid Lowe will be here to talk all things La Liga. We start in the Carabao Cup. The Spurs look in the quarter-final of this year's competition, beating Chelsea 5-4 on penalties after it finished one apiece after 90 minutes. Here to talk about the game, Frank Leboeuf, Julien Laurent, and Xhaka hits up. Where do we start? The tactical masterclass from Mourinho, the performance from Mendy? No! We start about Eric Dyer running to the toilet and Jose Mourinho running after him. That is brilliant in so many ways. Xhaka, have you ever? We've seen players go to the bathroom before. Sergio Ramos, I remember, did it in the past. But to have Mourinho running after him to tell him to hurry up, it's brilliant.
It's phenomenal. I can't remember. I mean, you mentioned Sergio Ramos. I don't recall that at all. I don't recall seeing anybody during a game leaving the pitch to go to the bathroom. I fully admit, though, at Newcastle, Les Ferdinand got locked in the bathroom at half-time during the game, and we had to start the second half with 10 men while we figured out how to get Les out. But I've not seen anybody have to leave during the game. That was great. By the way, what was Mourinho going to do? Was he going to help him out somehow?
I'm not sure how far we can go down this road without getting into trouble. But I'm sure Eric Dyer knew there was a match still going on. Frank, have you ever felt the need to do this?
No, I'm a star. I don't go to restrooms.
No,
first, you have to know that.
You're like the Queen.
Yeah, of course, exactly. No, but I had I was very unfortunate to have one of my teammates, and it was when I was very young in the amateur club, who didn't have the time to go to the restrooms. That was another story that I was pretty full with him. Yeah, I tell you. Yes, and but no, I never seen that. I never seen it in my life. And again, like Xhaka said, what Mourinho did to Dyer, except hurry up. And I'm sure that Dyer was really rushing the thing, but what can you do? That's stupid. Yeah, maybe giving him some toilet paper that he was missing. I don't know what he can do.
This is Espn Fc at its best. It's like we dreamt of this moment forever.
That's your question.
I know, exactly. Okay, let's talk about actually what happened in the game. Of course, we saw Chelsea go up early, Spurs coming back into it in the second half. Jules, what I thought was interesting, again, maybe away from what happened on the pitch, was the spat between Lampard and Mourinho on the sideline.
Yeah, clearly Mourinho not being happy of how loud either Frank was or his coaching staff. We saw that, remember, last season after the restart at Liverpool, where Lampard and Klopp had a bit of a moment as well, a bit of tension when they were accusing each other to be too loud, and there was a bit of swearing, and it looked very similar. But it's just that between Lampard and Mourinho, although when Mourinho was sacked in his first spell at Chelsea, obviously things were not great between them two, but we still associate them of like that great partnership they had in those two seasons, 04-05. So it was quite fascinating and interesting to see them having a go at each other for being too loud on the touchline in a game like this as managers now.
Yeah, we had a colleague there, Xhaka, who was saying basically Mourinho was telling Lampard that he wouldn't be out jumping around if he was losing 3-0.
Is it the same Jose Mourinho who's famed for running up and down touchlines when his team score goals in important circumstances? I don't get it. I don't get how you can contradict yourself so easily and carry on as though nobody notices or there are no receipts. Credit to Frank for feeling that he has the authority to stand up to managers of Jose Mourinho's reputation, of Jurgen Klopp's as well. But again, you start to tread dangerous ground when you are criticizing a manager for something and then you do it yourself. Jose Mourinho, well, I mean, I'm not sure what more to make of some of his own hypocrisies.
Frank, how would you assess Chelsea's performance tonight?
first very good first half where they dominated Tottenham. Tottenham were pressured in their on half, and we didn't see Tottenham. Chelsea did what they had to do. They scored a goal. It's why maybe Mourinho was very upset about, because they didn't have a tactic, Tottenham. So credit to Frank and to Chelsea in the first half, but after, very critical about the second half, the way they played, even if Kante came on after and changed a little bit the way Chelsea was playing. But it's sad to see that team still, since the beginning of the season, is incapable of playing 90 minutes. So they have to change that, because it's going to be a problem otherwise.
All that excitement in the summer, given the new signings and the money that was spent, Jules, this certainly hasn't lived up to expectations. I know we're only a couple of games in so far. Obviously, the win against Brighton, not particularly convincing. Loss against Liverpool, come from behind against West Brom, losing today on penalties.
That's right, but I think it's a process. That's what Frank Lampard keeps saying. And he's right in a way, because so many new players, some were ready, others were not ready. We saw Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, who had either injuries or were coming back from the Champions League, for example, in Thiago Silva's cases. And then a very small pre-season where you don't really have time to work on integrating those new signings. So it was always going to take time, more time than a Liverpool team, for example, who was already ready from the last 3 seasons, or even other clubs like that. So it's part of the process. But you're right, I think we could be disappointed. I think Frank would be disappointed by the results, also by the content of the games, and like Frank said, not being able to be consistent over 90 minutes and making mistakes, especially defensively. The goal they conceded tonight is a goal you cannot defend like that in a game like this. It's outrageous how bad it is defensively.
Yeah, defensively, how do you explain that, Frank? Especially off the back of that terrible display against West Brom at the weekend.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we say that for all season long last season, where we saw so many mistakes from the defense, where they don't talk to each other, they don't cover each other. I mean, the action from Tottenham, from Spurs, comes from the right side when there is a long pass to the left side, which is the right side of Chelsea, where Aspilicueta should have called back Werner but didn't. And then you have a cross. And Tomori doesn't go for the ball. Zuma thinks that Tomori will go for the ball, so he's not reacting well. And then you have somebody completely alone on the far post, Lamela, in that occasion, and score an easy goal where you cannot say anything to Mendy. I mean, he's crucified, 5 yards from the goal. So it's something that you have to work on. It's not only the defense, it's also the midfielders that they have to work. They have to come back. Even maybe Werner, or maybe, I don't know, Abraham or Mount. I mean, Mount was awful all game long. I mean, he's a very talented player, but some players have to wake up if they want to have a career. Right. It's not only a year, it's not only 6 months a career, it has to be more.
Mendy, how do we assess his debut, Shaka?
Good, without being anything more. I think it was important that he got out there, got some minutes, made a couple of saves that you'd expect him to make, dealt with crosses, looked comfortably in the first half, flapped at one in the second, but it's a good opportunity for him just to get out there, get some game time with his new team. I thought he did what was asked of him, par for the course.
I'm thinking about Eric Dyer, and I was going to say something, but then I get into trouble. So I'm going to go back to Spurs' overall performance. Jules, what do we take from it?
Well, we think that they managed to come back in the game again, and the changes that Mourinho made worked, because in the first half you could not work really out how tactically they were playing, what kind of formation. I thought it was an absolute shambles. It was much better in the second half with some of the changes, I think with a different attitude as well, and that would be very positive, especially after what happened against Newcastle at the weekend and the disappointment of conceding that goal so late. And just to finish on Dyer, he was really lucky that the tunnel at the new ground is really small, and then the dressing room was straight there, because you could have been in another stadium where you've got long tunnels and it's a long walk back to the toilet.
Yes, that's very true. No clean sheets for anyone in that game. We will move on to what we're hearing from the referees. We could go all day. It's so much fun. Brilliant. Okay,
God.
Let's talk about, shall we, news coming out that referees are being told to be a little more lenient in the Premier League when it comes to handball rule, something we discussed a lot after those two big calls in the Spurs game and the Crystal Palace match at the weekend. Shaka, for you, is this the right rhetoric to be coming out from the officials?
Of course it is, but it's a rhetoric that should have been there from the get-go. And listen, I understand IFAB recrafted laws, but those laws are open for interpretation and always have been, probably always will be. That's why you see games in England refereed different from games in France, different from Europa League games or Champions League games, and even different still at the World Cup. So to have this rigid interpretation of the law as it was written, and then referees using the excuse that, well, this is how IFAB wrote it, I thought took away from the referee's authority, took away from what you ask of and expect of referees, and as a result, you saw the ridiculous decisions as you did over the weekend. And even me sitting watching Newcastle play and hoping they get the point, and you see that decision, and as much as you're happy for the point, you're embarrassed by it. I mean, that's where refereeing is right now.
Is it fair, though, to make those changes now? Frank, say Spurs miss out on a top 4 place because of 2 points.
Well, it's never the right time, to change something. But when you see that it's becoming, a big problem, a big issue, you have to do something. And again, I said that yesterday during the show, where overall, what you have to do is to make sure that the referee that you're having have to know football. They have to understand the interpretation that Shaka was explaining. That's the main problem and the main concern that we have for decades, ages, where referees don't feel the football. So they can be tricked by the players, but if they had played football, they would have understood, the meaning and why the players were doing that and how to maybe give a penalty for a real handball and not for, something wasn't done on purpose.
Last word on this to you, Jules.
Well, I think we will see this weekend. We will see exactly what happened. We will all be watching or being in the stadium, looking at all those incidents and see what referees do. And I think it's probably the right call to say, okay, it's down to your own discretion. Go and have a look if you want to the screen and decide by yourself. Maybe don't be too harsh. Don't just follow strictly the rule. If you feel like, as the boys have just been saying, your interpretation is a bit different. It wouldn't have impacted on the game, the handball, or this one would have, and then you give it. But you don't have to give it every single time just because the ball brushed the arm, for example.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. The Carabao Cup then continues over the next couple of days. Manchester United away against Brighton. City, meanwhile, travel to Burnley. And then on Thursday, it's a repeat of Liverpool against Arsenal. As promised, Sid Lowe with us. Sid, before we talk about what happened in La Liga this weekend, let's just get your thoughts on those rumours of Dembele to Manchester United.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this, what was it, an hour or so ago, a couple of hours ago, my initial reaction was, I just don't buy this, I can't see this, but it was written by Santi Jimenez in the sports newspaper here, AS, and Santi's very reliable, he's very well informed, and he's not one of those journalists, of which there are quite a number in Catalunya and indeed in the rest of Spain, who jumps at the smallest thing, and so I'm inclined to take it seriously. I think it would be an extraordinary deal from Barcelona's point of view. I think if they were in a position where they were going to get basically half of the money back and lose any control over his future, I think that would be very, very bad news for them indeed. Now let's see how this plans out. I imagine this is the beginning of a series of discussions in which perhaps a solution is looked for in the short term, but maybe not in the long term. Because of course, if Barcelona were to allow Ousmane Dembele to leave now, and if they were to do it with no buyback clause, with no chance of getting him again next summer, and a fee that is substantially lower than the fee they paid for him, and the figures we've been looking at over the course of the evening look like it's around about half of what they paid for him in the first place, maybe even less than that, then to be honest, that would represent an enormous defeat from Barcelona's point of view. So that said, of course, we've seen so much go on at Barcelona right now that perhaps it wouldn't be too surprising. In fact, it's almost tempting, isn't it, to use Lionel Messi's line when we talk about these kind of things with Barcelona now, and we can use Messi's judgment on Barcelona time and time again, which is to say, at this stage now, Nothing surprises me.
But you say they would lose half their money. Said he's been a bust already, hasn't he? Despite the flashes, we've seen so many problems with injuries and his attitude as well, that maybe it will be in Barcelona's favour long term to get rid of him. What I don't quite understand is why Manchester United would be interested.
Well, look, I mean, to be honest, I can understand that point of view in the sense that I can understand that they might think, look, take some money now while we still can. Let's deal with this, let's resolve this, let's draw a line under it while we still can. And I can understand all of that. In Dembele's defence, I would say, as you rightly pointed out, the main problem has been injuries. That if you have him in the right environment, with the right kind of training routine, with the right kind of culture around the club, and you believe that you can get him fit again, and I suppose that's the big question, do they believe that they can do that? Do they believe they can fully integrate him? Then of course he's very talented, which brings us to the other part of it, which is Manchester United's perspective. Now I think a club like United, who look at a player like Dembele, may well look at the fact that in 3 years at Barcelona he hasn't had the chance with any consistency to really make an impact, but on those occasions when he's been fit, he has had a relatively significant contribution. There have been moments when you watch him play and you think, this guy is absolutely brilliant, that the natural talent is there without any doubt. And I think any club looking at him, if they think they can get him cheap, would at least think, look, this might be risky, but it's possibly a risk worth taking, because in terms of talent, in terms of the speed of movement, the ability to play on both wings, the fact that he's two-footed, that he scores a reasonable number of goals, and if you look at his goals per minute ratio at Barcelona, it's actually really quite good, then I can understand why a team would think, actually, yeah, let's give this a go.
Meanwhile, Sid, to Barcelona and actually what happened on the pitch, this wasn't to script, was it? Going out and playing so well as they did in that opening 45 minutes to beat Villarreal, who obviously were poor at the back, but still, you have to go out there and given all the pressure, this was pretty much the perfect start for Ronald Koeman.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it was a very good start. I think the fact that Ansu Fati played such a key part in it, of course, scoring the first 2 goals and winning the penalty that enabled Lionel Messi to score the third, I think is very important, because there has been a very keen sense that what they need to do, Barcelona, is rejuvenate the squad, is to have, I mean, at first, of course, we were talking about a revolution. Now, that revolution has not been completed yet. I suspect it won't by the end of the transfer window, but let's see. But one thing was for sure, they needed dynamism, they needed a sense of enthusiasm, they needed a sense of something new, and no one brings you that better than Ansu Fati, even though he's actually been around for a year. And I must admit, that was the thing that most struck me, was the other day looking at him score those 2 goals and thinking, he's still 17. I mean, he's been around for a year, which tells you how absurdly young he was when he broke through at the beginning of last season. And it's true that last season kind of evened out a little bit, that some of that early enthusiasm and excitement was gone, but that's to be expected, someone of that age. At this age, he scored more goals than Messi had when he too was 17. And so I think it's legitimate to be incredibly excited about him. And as you say, that's very important for Koeman, because it's about making sure that it works and you get results. It's a shift in formation, it's also a shift in personnel, although not as much of a shift in personnel as he would like. And I think in that sense it was a very, very positive debut. I think there are 1 or 2 question marks though, which is that while Barcelona played very well, we didn't yet see very much from Antoine Griezmann, of course, who's been moved into a new position, and of course the player that we're going to be watching all year and trying to see glimpses of his attitude, not just his performance, but how happy he is, was Leo Messi. And while Messi scored, this wasn't a performance, of course, in which Messi dominated.
Yeah, what have people been saying about that, Sid? Because there's a lot of time dedicated, I imagine, a lot of cameras were just on him for the whole 90 minutes, breaking down every single movement, be it with the ball or with his face.
Yeah, and of course it sort of depends on which side you're on. So we've seen reports suggesting, look, Messi smiles again. Well, you know, immediately after someone scored, it would be pretty bizarre if there was no smile at all. We've seen others look at him more broadly and look at his body language over the 90 minutes and say we saw very little enthusiasm from him. We saw very little sense that he really wants to lead this on. I think even the fact that Ansu played so well has been held against Messi, which I don't think it should be, but it has been, as if to say, well, you know, Ansu scored twice and Messi only got 1 and it was a penalty. And by the way, a penalty that he could have given to Ansu to give him a hat-trick, and he didn't. A penalty which, frankly, was very badly taken. You know, he was very fortunate to get under the body of Sergio. So that's all being bundled into this analysis of Messi. And one thing I would pick up on, and I personally think this is very good news, and some people will perhaps think that because I'm picking up on it, I'm looking for flaws. I think this is a good thing. But you look at that first Ansu Fati goal, that was the classic Jordi Alba run and cut back to Messi. Messi's coming towards the ball, Ansu gets there first, says thanks very much, and smashes it in the top of the net. And to be honest with you, I think Barcelona needed that.
Transitionally, what does that mean, Sid? Like, for example, could Messi leave in January?
Look, I'm never going to say never, but I don't see... I don't... At this stage, I don't see a scenario in which that helps anyone. I guess, look, we will see over the next 2 or 3 months how Messi feels, whether he is in a position where he thinks, I just want to get out now. Bear in mind that a huge amount has to happen between now and January, not just in terms of what happens on the pitch, but more importantly, what happens off the pitch. There's a motion of no confidence in the current president. There will be presidential elections. He could well be gone. He's a big part of the reason why Messi is unhappy, although I think we shouldn't look at it as being purely about him. And so I think there is so much that could change that I think it's probably premature. I think it's worth posing that question, but I think it's premature to come up with any kind of answer.
So it's the first time we've had you on since those comments when Luis Suarez made that move to Atletico Madrid. You mentioned it before, Lionel Messi. Once again, damning the Barcelona board and the way in which the club is run. When I saw that, part of me thought, what's the point? What are you doing now? How is this helping anything?
Yeah.
I understand you're making a statement, but you did the interview. Everybody knows how you feel. You are at Barcelona for one more season. You're one of the greatest players that we've ever seen. You want to win things. This isn't helping, is it? These sort of posts aren't helping anyone.
No, I mean, I must admit that there is a bit of me that felt similarly about this. And actually, you know what? There's a part of me that felt that this wasn't the right thing to do from the point of view of Luis Suarez as well. Now, obviously, look, Lionel Messi knows Luis Suarez a hell of a lot better than any of us do. He knows much better than any of us do about whether or not Suarez would have welcomed this particular comment. But bear in mind that Suarez's own departure, he even says at one point, I'm not going to allow this to be, to be about anything else. I'm going, I want this to be positive. And he dealt with it in a way that said, right, okay, I want to enjoy the fact that I'm going, I want to go in the right way. And then it was Messi who kind of had that little dig as well, where perhaps he didn't need to, not just because of Barcelona, but also because of Luis Suarez. That said, I think Messi would argue, and I think Messi's defenders would argue, and I must admit, I could see their point if they did, that having a dig at Barcelona doesn't actually damage the team at all. And I suspect that part of what Ronald Koeman will be trying to do, carefully, of course, because he's in a very delicate position himself, but I think part of what he'll be trying to do will be saying to the players, right, we look for common ground amongst ourselves. Forget the club, forget the president, forget the politics. This is about going on the pitch and winning. And that is what we want to do, no matter what other consequences it has, no matter what everyone else wants out there, no matter how angry you are or how bitter you feel about things in terms of the kind of political structure of the club, that doesn't matter, because do you want to win? Right. Let's go out there and try and win.
Sid Lowe, as always, thank you very much. With just a reminder, plenty of matches to come in La Liga midweek. Here is your schedule. Real Sociedad Valencia with a 1-0 win today. Meanwhile, Real Madrid and Action on Wednesday at home against Valladolid. Barcelona wrap things up away against Celta Vigo on Thursday. Extra time available, as always, over on our YouTube channel.